Very happy to have you here, Bindi.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
My first time in Athens.
Yeah, first time in Athens, so please welcome that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I've been here a few days, and I've been seeing startups, I've been seeing many different programs, and she's known as the queen of startups in Europe. Can I say that?
Embarrassingly.
And she looks like a queen, right? She also looks like a Greek, actually. Everybody keeps speaking her in Greek, is that right?
That's true. I'm not Greek, I'm Indian by background, but yeah, I need to learn Greek very quickly.
So the question that people kept asking me, and I want you to give your take, is what makes an entrepreneur? Entrepreneur is a very hip word. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur nowadays. It's becoming almost too fashionable. What is your take on that?
Well, first of all, I should sort of comment that the program I look after in the United Kingdom, not even in Europe, there's about 3,300 sort of tech CEOs that I've worked with. So I've learned a lot just by being on the outside and sitting back and observing. But every single one of them has a very similar set of characteristics. And I know a lot of you know this, but actually when you see it through so many people, it's the same time and time and time again. And I had to make a list, just because there's so many.
On a Microsoft Surface.
Yes, yes.
Maybe the first one ever happened in Greece. Here it is. You can be jealous.
I think the first comment I'll make is they have no fear. They're willing to take any risk, absolutely risk. They have just an absolute dogged determination and focus. And they just keep going and going and going and going and working and working and working and working. And they just don't stop. You know, a couple of good stories. You know, I've seen a fair number of failures as well as successes. And for me, the most impressive, what I've seen in entrepreneurs, is when things don't go so well. So I'll give you one example. One startup I worked with, they actually had something like a 750,000 euro contract with somebody. And that contract failed, and therefore these guys had to declare bankruptcy. And that was, you know, I saw them cry, and it was very, very emotional. But that didn't stop them. What they did is they actually declared bankruptcy. They then repurchased the IP from the auditors at an increased premium because the product was so interesting. They said, we don't care. We're going to put money back into it, and we're going to do it. And time again, they just refused to stop. And that's really one fantastic characteristic.
So you're saying you saw grown men cry. We all know that Greek men do not cry, right? Yeah, right. Go on.
Well, I don't know. These startups are like your babies. So, you know, I disagree with that. I have seen a lot of jumping for joy as well with successes. I think the other comment is, you know, I think part of the reason that you asked me to come speak with you is about this whole concept of doing. And honestly, they just deliver. They have an idea, they build the product, they get it out to market, they test it, they test it, they test it, and they just deliver, and they do, and they do, and they do. And you know, there was a blog recently that I read, and I won't state it because it's a bit of a swear word, but it's called Entrepreneurship something. And it's the Mark Suster blog. It was just written a couple of weeks ago. And he talks about sort of the downsides of being an entrepreneur, but you're working and working and working and doing and doing and doing. And the most successful ones continue to do that time and time and time again. They go there, they won't take no for an answer, so if they're trying to sell to someone, they'll close the deal. They will not say no for an answer. And even, for example, wanting to work with me at Microsoft or with any of us in big corporates, they just won't take no for an answer. I'm getting emails, phone calls, Twitters, Facebooks, LinkedIn messages. They're just really fantastically persistent. You know, they just deliver.
So, in terms of, you cover Europe. I mean, you have this view of Europe that very, very few people have, right? I mean, we all know there's a crisis in Greece, but the economic climate in Europe is not that good. Though we're seeing, what is your take on the European market, and where do you see some cities that are better than others? I mean, everybody talks about London. It's very fashionable to talk about Berlin these days as well. Sadly, not many people talk about Athens yet. I hope one day. So what is your take on this? Is it possible, because the US have this integrated market that makes it a very big market, We have the European Union, but we still speak several languages, several regulations. What do you say?
Well, on the whole, I'm actually quite positive. Different people have different views, but I actually started the program that I run in the UK about almost 5 years ago. And it was sort of the end of the first nuclear winter, right? Do you remember that? Those of you that were around long enough. I remember Lars from Facebook I was talking to earlier, and he speaks later tonight. He called it the tech wreck, and I called it the nuclear winter. But actually what I've seen is tremendous growth, and I saw a lot of amazing things happening since 2008. So I'm actually on the whole quite positive. There's a report that was released, and I do encourage you guys to download it. It was called the Startup Genome Project, and it sort of gave the Global Cities report. Of course, Silicon Valley was number 1. Tel Aviv was number 2. And in Europe, it was a little bit disappointing. London was 7th. Paris was 11th. Moscow was 14th, and Berlin was 15th.
15th, I think,
But really, in there, what they talked about is exactly what I'm talking about, is sort of the mindset of the entrepreneur. And I'm going to quote them. It measures how well the population of founders in a given ecosystem thinks like a great entrepreneur. It's where the entrepreneur is visionary, resilient, has a high appetite for risk, a strong work ethic, and has the ability to overcome the challenges. And I'm actually seeing that, living in London, just some of the great stories of what I see in London. So a good example is one of the chats earlier, they talked about a lot of the empty space that you have in Athens. Yeah. And a lot of startups I know just pop up in really crazy empty spaces around London. And one of my favorite stories is the startup that popped up in a factory in northwest London. It was next door to a curry factory, and the empty factory needed a babysitter. So the startup said, okay, we'll just set up there. And so every day they used to work with the smell of curry from the curry factory coming in next door. But they just set it up beautifully. They found old, furniture, created desks. And one of the coolest things they did is they were trying to get investment. And they set up a red carpet down this horrible old pathway, candlelight all the way down, and they invited investors and people like me along to come meet them and learn what their company did. And they convinced one of their mothers to cook a dinner for about 30 of us. So it was amazing. They set up a table, they just popped it up. And I'm seeing that time and time again. These guys just kind of make it work. And I think there's a real opportunity here based on some of the stuff I've been seeing in Athens and just the number of people I see in the audience as well.
But have you seen differences in the different ecosystems that exist in Europe? Do you think there's one recipe that works everywhere? Do you think every country has to have its own? I mean, I know you love to cook. She's an amazing cook. If you're ever lucky to taste her food, you'll be amazed.
Yeah, I've even.
So, do you think the recipe, is it the same in all the countries in Europe? Do you think, what have you seen maybe?
Well, I think an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter where they're from, right? They're there and they want to succeed. I think culturally, it depends. I think actually what I've seen in the ecosystems that have worked, so in London, Paris, Berlin, there's a real sense of community and a real ecosystem. So a really good story is in 2008, a startup in London called Huddle actually set up a meetup called Drink Tank. And the reason they did that is because there was a lot of CEOs, quite lonely, didn't know each other, and they just wanted to do a meetup, CEO to CEO, where they would just meet up once a month and they would talk to each other and learn from each other and peer mentor each other. And that actually, I felt was the seed of what was starting to bubble in London. And then I start to see that, in places like Berlin, we've got the co-working spaces.
Co-working spaces, yeah.
Exactly. And then, in London, we've got a lot of co-working spaces and big corporates now starting to set up those spaces. So the Google campus, I know Microsoft has set up a similar type of space where it's not co-working, but you can go in and you can create and design, and a lot of the big corporates are getting involved. So I think it really starts with the seed of one or two passionate individuals that can set it up and get it going. And it's amazing how it blossoms. And having lived through that in London and now seeing that across Europe, I'm pretty positive, actually.
We're seeing some seeds, actually, in Athens already. There's a few co-working spaces, incubators that, you've been aware of. We've been talking about it last night, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot of good stuff already. So maybe these are the good signs. So we're talking about Europe, so let's not talk about Greece. Greece is in a dire situation. We read the news. Don't believe all the news about Greece, though, right? There's no riots in the streets. You've seen that.
Nothing yet.
There's exaggerations from the press, which is understandable. What kind of advice would you give the Greeks? Whether they're entrepreneurs, whether they just want to help.
I think don't let the current situation get you down. I mean, when we were in London in 2008, it was pretty dire. People were losing their jobs, and that was back in the day where whole banks were shutting down. And the observation I made is don't let it get you down. Just get out there and be persistent, and don't be scared of failure. I think that's one of the things I do notice in Europe, that people are a bit more scared of failure. And I come from an Indian background, and I've had my fair share of failures, if you want to call it that. And I was really ashamed to tell my family, because they're very pressuring of you to be successful. But actually, if you're not scared of it, you just keep going. I think that's very important. Other things I sort of wrote down here, I jotted a bunch of stuff. Be innovative. Don't be scared to question. Don't let the naysayers get you down. So, I'll give you a good example. So we do a big European event for Microsoft with startups, and I like to call it the Eurovision Pitch Contest. We've got 15 startups from around Europe, and this year we actually had a Greek startup pitch, Parking Defenders, so some of you might know John, and John was fantastic. We're like, we've never really met a Greek entrepreneur, and this guy was awesome, and he did come in the sort of the top set of winning entrepreneurs.
I do remember,
Yeah, and Paul was actually at that event. And I think the one thing we noticed about him is he didn't let the naysayers get him down. He had a great idea, he found a problem. I think the other thing is create a community and ecosystem, and I'm starting to see that. But really be there for each other, mentor each other, and keep flying people in. Greece is a cool country, so keep flying, mentors and people like that in. Yeah. Paul is incredibly well connected, and that's why I was privileged enough to come here. But just keep flying people in and learn from each other, and learn from the successes and failures, and just don't be scared to get back up and dust yourself off.
Yeah, it's just a little parenthesis on the story. I was in 2008, I was living in Tokyo, so similar story. There was a huge crash. We all know the financial crisis. Same thing happened. Japan is not known to be an entrepreneur country, and then I saw so many startups actually being created. It's also an opportunity. A crisis is also an opportunity. That's where you need to go through catharsis. It's easy to say, I understand, but there are people that are ready to help.
Well, I think one stat I can give you is a lot of entrepreneurs that I've seen actually were made redundant from large companies. So they'd lost their jobs, and they just said, what, forget it, I'm just going to create my own company. And two presentations ago, he said the right thing, which is, if you can't find a job, create your dream job. And you can do that. And statistics that I regularly say, I do a lot of work with the UK government, and I would estimate that, the BizSpark program in the UK, we've created between 6,000 and 8,000 jobs over the last 2-3 years. So really, you guys can create that. And it is, again, going back to today's theme, it's about doing it and getting out there and be willing to take the risk. It's not easy, long slog, hard hours. But
2 words, what is for you, you mentioned mentors, what is for you the role of role models? Do you think countries or ecosystems needs role models, it needs success stories?
What I'm seeing is a really amazing trend in Europe is, more and more entrepreneurs who've made it the first time. So I'm thinking of Sennstrom and Skype and setting up Atomico, or Brent Hoberman from Last Minute, and Michael Birch from Bebo setting up Pro Founders. And they're actually second-time entrepreneurs investing in first-time entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. And I'm beginning to see that as actually a really interesting trend. And even entrepreneurs that I started working with 4 years ago, they're now, when I met them, there were 4 people and a couple of punks in a small office, and now they're on their Series C funding, they're turning over $100 million a year, and they're actually reinvesting in people they believe in. So actually, the very successful entrepreneurs I'm seeing giving back. So I think that's sort of another comment is karma is an amazing thing. And I'm a Hindu, so for me it's a big thing. But I find time and time again, if you keep giving, you do get back, in spades.
Remember, guy.
Yeah, karma's great.
Greek startups. I know a lot of you guys in Greek startups. You're amazing. Don't let people tell you're not, because compared to other, she just told you about the story about parking defense. I'm sorry.
Parking defenders,
sorry
John.
for that. Sorry. And you are great, but don't forget to give all the time. It will come back to you. It will come back to you. Don't hold on. Well, maybe now a little bit more about you.
Yeah.
Besides you being an amazing cook, I know you because the reason also that she's so much appreciated, so many startups love her. I mean, now she's leaving Microsoft BizSpark and moving on to Silicon Valley Bank, and I know that you have all these startups coming back to you. Oh, we love you. Oh, why are you going? And or oh, we want to follow you. What are you going to do? So, but how did you make this effect on people besides being a very beautiful lady?
Being a good cook. No, I've actually, I think one of the things that I really like to do is try to help them where I can. So if there's a product I want to test of theirs, I will. I'll try break it. We have the saying. And,
by the way, you test products even on this stage, actually, right?
Yeah, this is a startup called upperstreet.com. And you go online and you build the shoes. So I tested the shoe builder, I purchased a pair of shoes, and this is the product. So I'm actually, as we say at Microsoft, when we're testing software or a product, we call eating our own dog food. So this is definitely not dog food, but I tested it for her.
And you love shoes.
I love shoes, yes, yeah. So if I was going to do a startup, it'd probably have to be around shoes. But that's one of the things I like to do, is I really like to get involved with the product and the company. And if it doesn't work, I'll be the first to pick up the phone and call them. And they really like me to test it and give it a go. Yeah. One startup, they're focused on chefs and cooking, so yeah, they wrote me into their office, and I cooked for 20 of them, which was a bit nerve-wracking because a lot of them were chefs, and that was very scary. And it's constantly trying it. And then another startup, they, to save money, they have a barn on their farmland about an hour outside London. So they've convinced me to go walk the dogs and, hang out with them as they build their product set. So I think I care. I spend a lot of time with them, and I think that makes a difference. I think, secondly, I've worked in a startup myself.
But you're available, meaning when they ask you, because that's also something, you guys, we do startups here in Greece, ask, people are there, they will actually answer you. Don't think that, don't be shy, basically. People I meet, like people like her, there's a lot of people, not a lot of people like her because she's exceptional, but a lot of very, very good people. So don't hesitate.
Yeah, I think don't be scared of asking, I think is the comment. And then, there are big corporates like ourselves, IBM, Google, Microsoft. All of us actually do have programs where we do help early stage companies. So just work out what those kind of resources are.
So what would be, in a few words, your key advices? Like the main points if this audience has to leave now, what would we remember?
What's the theme of today? Just do it, guys. You have nothing to lose, honestly. I think that's my key advice.
See? Do it. Thank you, guys.